Hello everyone and welcome to round 6 of this year's GRENKE Freestyle Chess Open Tournament, however only for one of the players. Magnus Carlsen is currently on 5 out of 5 and he played all of the 5 games in this tournament. Awonder Liang, however, did not start in the Freestyle Chess Open Tournament. He actually started in the standard GRENKE Chess Classic where they play regular chess, and then only switched to this tournament after he played 4 rounds there. It's allowed, you are allowed to switch tournaments during the first 5 rounds, I guess once. So he did very well in regular chess. He was on 3.5 out of 4. Then he came to the Freestyle Chess Open. He defeated Daniel Dartha in round 5, and now he faces Magnus Carlsen. It's I don't know why someone would do that. Probably he thought it was a very good chance of him facing Magnus, so why wouldn't he? And he does get the white pieces, so you know, as good as opportunity as any, I guess. Or maybe he was planning to do that all along. I have no idea. But okay, obviously he's doing very well in both the regular and chess 960 chess. Now he faces Magnus with white. Magnus is undefeated. He's on 5 out of 5. Can he continue, or will Awonder Liang be the one to stop him? So let's check it out. The position, a pretty standard one, you know, if that can be said about Fisher Random. Knight, Bishop, Rooks, King between the two Rooks, then Knight, Bishop, Queen, and of course the moves that could be played are something like e4, opening up the rook, pawn to c3, opening up the light square bishop, or you open up the queen on h1, maybe the dark square bishop on g1, or you start with the knight, something like knight to b3. So anything can be played, and here Awonder plays knight to b3. It's one of those positions where rook and king are on c1 and d1, so you can castle queenside, right on move 1, but they actually decided to castle on move 4. So okay, knight to b3 by Awonder. Magnus goes pawn to c6, opens up the dark square bishop. We have pawn to c3. Awonder opens up the light square bishop, and pawn to g6. Magnus opens up the queen. Pawn to e4, moving the pawn in front of the rook 2 squares. Pawn to e5, Magnus does the same, and they both castle queenside. So castles, and already it's a pretty, you know, normal position. We have pawn to d4, grabbing the full center, captures, sorry, not c4, captures on d4, and Magnus goes pawn to f5. Due to this early challenge of the center, maybe knight captures on d4 was the way to go, even though c captures on d4 feels a lot more natural. And here you could decide to strengthen the center with pawn to f3, Awonder goes pawn to e5. And okay, Magnus goes knight to e6, as d5 can no longer be played. We have pawn to h3, preparing bishop to h2, and now pawn to d6. Magnus goes after the e5 pawn, and Awonder defends it. We have bishop to h2, and now Magnus could continue putting pressure on the center with something like pawn to f4, blocking the dark square bishop, and then just basically forcing white to capture on d6, thus developing the dark square bishop. But instead, he decides to release the tension in the center. D captures on e5, bishop captures, we have bishop captures on e5, d captures, and rook captures on d1. And you could play rook captures on d1. The problem is after rook captures on d1, you no longer defend the e5 pawn. And after knight to f4, there's just no good way to defend it. If you play pawn to g3, then knight e2 check, let's say king d2, yes, you are attacking the knight, but queen captures on e5, and it's a pretty sad, it's a losing position for white. So that's why after rook captures on d1, king captures on d1, now you're gonna have to spend a few more moves getting the bishop into the game and moving the king sideways. Knight to b6 by Magnus, and queen to h2, adding another defender to the e5 pawn. And here Magnus actually spent 22 minutes on his clock. The clocks the clock time is being burned by both sides, you know, rigorously. But yeah, 22 minutes for one move. That's a lot of time for Magnus to spend for a move. And if you wonder what to do here, it's not easy to find an idea. The engine gives something like queen to g7, developing the queen this way, so you can bring the queen over to d7, rook to d8, or maybe even queen to h6 if the king comes to c1. You could imagine something like rook d8 check, check, king to c1, maybe queen comes to h6, also pawn to c5, pawn to c4, definitely an option. Magnus plays pawn to h5. So now he no longer has to play queen g7, queen h6, he can simply play queen to h6 if needed, and he's stopping against any g4 action in the future. We have queen to g3, and Magnus goes bishop to f7, just defending the pawn on g6. You could also defend it with queen to h6, something like the variation we discussed, the rook to d8 check, let's say king c1, queen to h6 with check, and after queen to e3, it's already very, very easy for white to go wrong. For example, knight to f4, and how are you continuing this game? Imagine you play something like pawn to g3, already knight d5, and you can resign. The only square where you're allowed to remain on this diagonal is queen to d2, but then you're kind of okay, but you also lose the knight to c3. It's a disgusting move. Your queen is hanging, and after you capture, queen captures on c3, then knight to e2 with a double check, picking up the queen on c3, and that's it. So rook d8, incredibly complicated, but it could go very, very wrong for white very quickly. So Magnus goes bishop to f7. He sort of allows Awonder to catch his breath, and he plays pawn to h4. We have rook to d8 check now, king to c1, and knight to c4. Very annoying piece there. We have bishop to c2, trying to hide the king all the way to the queen side, and Magnus plays rook to d5. And unfortunately for Awonder, there's no good way to defend the e5 pawn. It's attacked 3 times, and a move like pawn to f4 is easily met with queen to h6, now attacking the f4 pawn, and you cannot defend both the f4 pawn and the threat of knight captures on e5 because the f4 pawn is pinned. So that's the problem. That's why Awonder plays queen to c3. He gives up the pawn, and okay, it's only one pawn. Magnus captures it, rook captures on e5, and now knight to e3. And this is now an incredibly complicated position where you could easily go wrong. Imagine, okay, you're thinking, okay, I'm up a pawn, I'm just going to capture a knight on e3. Already rook captures on e3, and you can resign. There's no way to defend the rook. If you move the rook, you lose the queen on h8. That's it, game over. So Magnus does what Magnus does best, and that is playing the top engine move, and he plays knight to c7, which looks odd as the knight on c4 is hanging, but it doesn't matter. Magnus plays, well, he played knight to c7, Awonder plays knight captures on c4, we have rook captures on e1 check, queen captures on e1, and bishop captures on c4. We have queen to e3, and now, okay, the a7 pawn is hanging, Magnus defends it, pawn to b6, we have knight to d4 going after the c6 pawn, and Magnus plays queen to f6. And this is where the fun really starts. You could say that, okay, Magnus has a light square bishop, it makes sense to play something like pawn to a3, put all of our pawns on dark squares, and if bishop d5, you play pawn to g3 as well, you have all pawns on dark squares. Okay, Magnus is up a pawn, but he has a light square bishop, we should be able to play this. But this is where the Magnus effect kicks in. Awonder tries to outcalculate Magnus, he plays knight to f3, and he invites bishop captures on a2. And you can see that Magnus is also low on time, even lower on time, and Magnus decides to capture the pawn. He plays bishop captures on a2, spent a minute on this calculation, and now we have queen to e5, offering a queen trade, and this is what Awonder had in mind. Well, first, I'm gonna ask you to pause the video here because it's not easy. There's only one winning line for Magnus, and it's not easy to only spot the first move. You also have to see the idea behind the move in order to really capitalize on the position. So have at it, you know, try to crack the position while I give you a couple of seconds. So the move you had to find, and this is the only one that wins the game, is queen to f7. It makes sense once you see it, but the real idea is that, okay, should Magnus trade queens with captures and captures? You might be thinking, well, okay, what's the problem? Yes, both of our pawns are hanging, but can't we just play, and also there's the threat of b3 trapping the bishop there, but you can play bishop d5, and you offer this pawn for this pawn. Well, it doesn't work, because after knight captures and bishop captures, the f5 pawn falls as well. And it falls with check. After king to d8, knight to f4, knight to f4 attacks the bishop and the pawn, bishop f3 defending, and now bishop to g6. So you will win that pawn, and after something like knight d5, doesn't really matter what you play. You can go bishop captures on h5, knight captures on f4, bishop captures on f3, and okay, knight d3 check will win another pawn, but it doesn't matter. Sorry, knight captures on f2, knight captures on b2. And okay, even though you have 3 connected pass pawns on the queen side, Awonder would have 2 pass pawns on the king side, and this is enough to hold a draw, as bishops are a little bit better than knights on an open board. They go, you know, they have very long range, and the knight actually has to be there to make a difference. So after queen to e5, Magnus said, well, nope, I'm not playing that. I'm playing queen to f7. And this sort of ruins your plans. The g6 pawn is defended. The bishop here is defended. So pawn to b3 doesn't make all that much sense. You're just going to capture on b3. And after queen to d6, which again seems like it's doing a great job, and Magnus could easily make a mistake. For example, king b7 defending the pawn, knight e5 attacks the c6 pawn, attacks the g6 pawn, attacks the queen. So, you know, this would be great for Awonder. But after queen to d6, Magnus plays queen to c4. And okay, you also have to worry about moves like bishop to b3 maybe, but also some other ones like queen to f1 with check. And Awonder played queen captures on g6. He says, all right, if bishop to b3, I don't really mind. I can just play queen captures on f5 with check. And also I will have the bishop on c2 defended. But no, Magnus played queen to f1 with check. And this is basically what you had to see. Queen f7, queen to c4, queen to f1. And this is now enough to win the game. Bishop to d1 was played by Awonder, and now Magnus plays bishop to b3, and he was in this position on move 28 that Awonder Liang resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. It's a really sad position. Queen captures on d1 will be checkmate, and you cannot go something like check and then go here as the bishop covers that square. You cannot play queen captures on f5, because once the king moves, or even knight to e6, there's no square that the queen can go to help out with the defense of the bishop on d1. So basically after bishop to b3, you're going to have to play queen to d6 to defend the bishop, but now Magnus will just capture, and after queen captures, also grab the f2 pawn. Magnus would be up 2 pawns, and of course it would be silly to play against 2 pawns up Magnus. That's, I mean, who are you kidding, good sir? So yeah, another win by Magnus. He moves on to 6 out of 6, and well, that's just absolutely incredible. You know, if as they say, if winning was motion, Magnus would be the perpetual motion machine, as he just keeps on winning, and there seems to be no stopping him. Will he make it a 9 out of 9? No one knows, but it doesn't seem like anyone is here to stop him. Seems that it's easier to play against Magnus when you're safeguarded by the protective waters of theory. Here, where it's we're playing chess for move 1, you feel the full strength of Magnus, where you don't have the engine behind you. So it's very, very scary. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see what happens in round 7. Still don't know who the opponents are, but we'll see. Obviously, someone who is doing very well. Parham defeated Leon Mendonça, so perhaps it will be Magnus against Parham. Parham is an unpleasant opponent for anyone in any time format, so maybe he could be the one to stop Magnus's onslaught. But we'll see what happens. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. 29 moves, that's all it, or rather 28 moves, that's all it took for Magnus with the black pieces. Scary stuff. But yeah, I would like to thank Charles Benjamin Flynn, Diane Schwartz, Ilya Maltsev, Mohammed Babar Khalil, and the Animated Chemist for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.